Welcome back, kiddies. In the second episode of Tales from the Grid, we're going to talk about a light gun game from one of our favorite series of all time. Today we're going to talk about House of the Dead 2.
We're also going to reveal the fourth episode in our countdown of our favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes of all time. And of course, we brought along some beer from O Fallons Brewery. This is O Fallons Pumpkin Beer.
And if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you never miss an upload. And as always, sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and enjoy this episode of Tales from the Grid. Alrighty, House of the Dead 2.
Yes, Sega's second release in the House of the Dead series. It found its way to the arcades in 1998. It was then ported to the home console scene via the Sega Dreamcast in 1999.
And the Sega Dreamcast version did very little for the game, as it was basically identical, but you could play it at home, and that's a nice convenience.
Yeah, and it was kind of right around the time frame, maybe a little bit during this PS1 and Sega Saturn era, where home consoles could bring the true, almost exact arcade experience to the home console, and that was a really big deal.
Which, yeah, back then was so exciting because you didn't have to go and put all your quarters in, you could just buy the game and play it forever.
Yeah, it is worth noting the light guns for the Dreamcast, for any collectors out there, they're a little touchy, little hit and miss.
Yeah.
They are expensive and kind of tough to find, and there's a little backstory. So Sega, in the North American territory, never released an official light gun for the Sega Dreamcast. It was right during a time of tragedy with some school shootings, and Sega decided, hey, we're not going to release a light gun. Totally understandable. So it was basically to the third-party companies to release one.
So the Mad Catz is the official light gun for the Dreamcast.
There's another one I have found by a company called Interact called the Starfire. It's fairly hit and miss, but I've had some decent luck with it, so between those two, it's about a 50-50 dice roll of how well the detection's going to work with them.
And you have to have a CRT TV in order to play those, so that's another thing you have to have, because most people nowadays have thrown those away.
Yeah, that's a huge disclaimer. No light gun, traditional light gun, will work on a modern television.
But the way we like to play light gun games, it doesn't matter, because we play it on the Wii. And this game was later ported to the Nintendo Wii, and it comes with House of the Dead 2 and House of the Dead 3.
Why did we choose House of the Dead for this episode?
Well, the channel was founded on House of the Dead Overkill. It made our top 5 video, our very first episode ever, and one of the first times we ever gamed together, we sat down and beat that game. And that game is my favorite in the series. It's so much fun. And then when we went down to Mo GameCon, we beat House of the Dead 1 at Two Plumbers Brewery, and that was just so much fun.
Yeah, we walked in, and of course, we had Two Plumbers Brewery. We're like, beer, 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 beer. And as soon as we got our beer, the next thing we noticed was a House of the Dead 1 cabinet. So if you can find an original arcade cabinet for any of the House of the Dead games, that is the #1 preferred way to play. So when we were there, we're like, okay, we've beat Overkill. That kind of spawned the start of our channel. It's time we start at the beginning and we beat House of the Dead 1.
So now we're at House of the Dead 2, and this game is so sweet. So what do you think about House of the Dead 2?
Love this game. This was the first game I ever played in the series. I originally beat it on the Sega Dreamcast, so I do have a little bit of a fond, nostalgic attachment to the Dreamcast version of this game. And I love this game. You mentioned that Overkill is probably your favorite in the series. I love Overkill. I love what they did with the acting and the cinematic presentation of that game. But there is pretty much nothing any game can do to dethrone this game as my favorite light gun game of all time.
Of all time.
I love this game.
Wow. And I love this game too because it's so much fun to play during this time of year. Actually, scratch that. This game is so much fun to play during any time of year. This game is one of the hardest.
The reason I love this game so much is that everything we look for in a light gun game is all packed into one with House of the Dead 2. It's so fast-paced, it's carpal tunnel-inducing, it's everything we look for in a light gun game, and it's going to leave you writhing in pain after you play it.
Yeah, every time I would go to a cutscene, I would take my hand off the trigger and have to shake it because my arm was so sore, and I'm like, man, I gotta fast trigger, I can't have cramps.
Yeah, and so that box is checked. I also love extra things packed into light gun games, like collectibles and things like that. And this has those, and they're quick drive-by pans of the camera that you have to be precise.
They're literally split second to see it, and it's when you're turning, and sometimes it's so hard because you'll see it and you're like, oh man, how is that even possible?
And there's violence. Tons of unnecessary violence that makes you question if you're okay in the head, and it's all there. So check that box.
Checkmate.
Absolutely. Voice acting. It needs to be so piss poor that you want to vomit. And this game has some of the worst voice acting of all time, and it makes it great. It makes it humorous. It makes me want to play it more and more and more to hear how bad it is.
It's so funny. Just for all the characters are like monotone basically, and especially the bad boss guy, Goldman. He is hilarious.
Dude, his laugh.
People of the AMS, I am Goldman. I don't care if you people try to get in my way or not. In time you'll find out who's right.
The funny part about this is there's probably people out there that when they initially hear the voice acting, they're like, I can't play this, it's horrible. But just hang on, because it is worth it. It is so bad that it is great. The other thing I love about light gun games is I want them to be quick. I like being a 1 to 2 hour playtime or less, so you can sit down with a friend, blast through it. They're rewarding, they're fast paced, and this game has all of those things we mentioned packed into one, and that's why I love House of the Dead 2.
That's why I love it too. I just love any light gun game that's very quick because we don't have a lot of time to just sit down and game. And if we can plug in a light gun game and beat it in 45 minutes, we get that satisfaction of beating a game, and it's also just so much fun. And we're so amped from playing it that we're ready to tackle anything.
So overall, we talked about the arcade, Dreamcast, and Nintendo Wii. What do you think would be the preferred? So for somebody watching this who's never played House of the Dead 2, how should they try playing this game?
The ideal way to play it would be the arcade. There's nothing better than going to an arcade with a friend, grabbing a beer, and pumping quarters in. And even if it's just a normal arcade with no alcohol, it's still fun to go and pump quarters in like you were a kid. Yeah. But that's so much fun because you'll be like trying to shoot with one hand and pumping quarters in, or pumping quarters in for another person. It's just, that is the preferred way. But if you can't do that, I prefer the Wii version because it's easy to find. Wii's are really cheap, and the light guns are pretty cheap too.
Yeah, and the games are relatively cheap. You can get House of the Dead 2, 3, and Overkill on the Wii for a very reasonable price. I did mention my nostalgia strings tied to the Dreamcast version because that was the first time I ever played this game. But beware of that. It's a great experience if you can obtain that. But the light guns for the Dreamcast only work on CRT TVs. It will not work on a modern television. So alert, alert, alert. Wee-oo, wee-oo, wee-oo. You have to have a CRT TV to use the light guns for the Dreamcast. And finding quality light guns that still work well and have great hit detection can be hit and miss.
And they're really pricey. The Wii. That's the best route.
The path of least resistance, for sure.
And there's so many other light gun games for the Wii, which is really cool. And the Nyko Perfect Shot for the Wii is one of the best light guns, I think, that's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very ergonomic. It feels great. There's a heftiness to it in the hand. It is a great option if you're wanting to recreate that light gun experience on the Nintendo Wii. It is by far the best route to go.
You just need to get out there and find a way to play this game. It doesn't matter if it's the Wii, arcade, or Dreamcast.
It's available on PC too, I've heard.
Yes, so just find a way to play it and play this game, or play any of the games in this series. They're all fun. Now, let's talk about the beer. What do you think?
It's a letdown. There's not much going on here. I was really excited because there's a lot of particles floating around. I was thinking, okay, this is maybe an unfiltered, very organic type of beer. And it falls fairly flat on its face. There's not much going on. Very thin mouthfeel. There's no lasting flavor. It dissipates very quickly after the swallow. It's not bad, but it is far from good or great. I like pumpkin beers. I love fall beers, and I'm gonna say this is kind of a hard pass. I'm not a big fan of this.
I don't think I'll drink this again. Like you said, it's really thin, and this is the second beer we've reviewed from O Fallons, and they both kind of have the similar taste. I mean, not like in like ingredients. Like the other one was the red, and that's way different. But they're both like really thin, and like they're just really simple beers. Yeah. And I don't know if that's what the brewery's going for or what, but it kind of doesn't want me to try another beer from O Fallons.
Yeah, they're very safe plays. It's just there's not a lot going on. It's a very simple construct, and it sucks. I hate saying bad things about small breweries, especially. And you know, if you watch our other episodes, we're overwhelmingly positive, typically in our beer review section. And if there's any quality to be obtained, we try ripping that out and putting that to the forefront. But this is the second beer by this company that is just, it's not very good.
It just feels like a light beer that has a very small pumpkin taste added to it. So if you bought like a Bud Light or something like that and you got like pumpkin flavoring and dumped it in that, it'd probably be the same.
Yeah, it's definitely not a home run. It's definitely not moving the needle for me whatsoever.
So let's move on to something more positive. Let's go to our number 4 pick of Tales from the Crypt.
Number 4.
This episode is called The Foursided Triangle. We mentioned in the first episode of the series that there were so many big-time actors. Not necessarily A-list celebrity here, but Patricia Arquette is in this episode. And she's very young, and she's very foxy in this episode.
Yeah, she's not bad looking, and most people will recognize her from Boyhood or Medium. So she's like a well-established actress, but this was back when she was young.
And it is a twisted, dark, cryptic story to say the least. And it's basically a story of servitude. So Mary Jo finds herself in a relationship with this family, the Yates, at the Yates family farm. And it is of a servant relationship to the Yates family. How did that even happen?
So they don't really explain it. They say it in like one scene. Apparently she was in trouble with the law and they like picked her up on the side of the road running from the law and like kind of saved her so she wouldn't get arrested or go to jail. She's kind of like a prisoner at the farm, but like you said, it's like a servitude. But they only mention it once, so you kind of don't know the relationship, but that's not what the story's about. The story is like a weird, twisted love story. So Mr. Yates is absolutely in love with Mary Jo, and he's like creeping on her through the hole in the barn, and like he wants to be with her so bad, and his wife knows it and gets upset with him, and he's acting like, oh, I didn't do nothing.
Yeah, and these two, the Yates, they are a few bricks shy of a load. There's something not quite right. They're definitely somewhere that allows you to breed with things maybe that you shouldn't. They basically abuse Mary Jo, and the wife is very abusive.
Oh yeah, she's like hitting people with her cane.
Yeah, and she's kind of handicapped, and it's kind of a sad story. And he eventually comes on. He expects more from this relationship. She is willing to work for them, but he makes some moves, tries forcing himself on her, and things get violent. He assaults her. And from that point forward, it appears that Mary Jo maybe has a little bit of brain damage from the concussion she received.
Yeah, which is kind of sad because she like is running through the woods trying to get away, and she's like bleeding from the head, and she falls over and like looks up, and she sees a scarecrow, and the scarecrow like reaches out to like help her, and then she falls back asleep.
Yep.
And then from that point forward, she's in love with the scarecrow. She thinks the scarecrow is her boyfriend.
Yes, that's how messed up this episode
no
is.
joke. And throughout the episode, she's like helping the people in the house, and she's like, oh, I put on perfume for my man.
Yeah.
I wore this outfit for my man. Hopefully he likes it. And they're like, your man?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, he's tall, he's in the field, he's so strong and big. And they're like, your man, that's a scarecrow.
Yeah, and all the while, George Yates' lust for her just continues to grow as he notices she is in a vulnerable state. So he ratchets up his attempts to get with Mary Jo. And we don't want to spoil it because you need to get out and watch this episode. It's the Foursided Triangle, second season of Tales from the Crypt. But I think George's lust is going to get the best of him. So you need to tune in and watch this episode. It is fantastic. Although it's number 4 and we have 3 ahead of it, that just tells you how good this countdown is getting because this is an incredible episode.
Yeah, we'll leave a link below so you can go watch it. And have you guys played any of the House of the Dead games? If you have, leave a comment below with your favorite and let us know why. And what do you think of this episode of Tales from the Crypt? We'll come at you next time with our number 3 pick. Keep gaming, keep drinking. We'll see you next time on Gaming Off the Grid.
And we brought along a beer from O Fallons Brewery. Today we're drinking O Fallons Pumpkin Beer.
Oh, and then I'll close it. Okay. Today we're going to talk about one of our favorite light gun games from one of our favorite... Nope.
Not gonna fucking tornado sirens going off. We're just gonna record.
Fucking tornado. Today we're going to talk about a light gun game. God, that's a lot of hard words. Welcome back, kiddies, to episode... Okay.
You got me.
Okay. Got
Got me good, fucker.